There is a difference between wishful fan speculation and an actual confirmed report, and faithful, we just got the actual report. ESPN insider John Keim has confirmed there is genuine mutual interest between the Washington Commanders and free agent receiver Stefon Diggs. That is not a rumor floating around social media. That is a credible beat reporter putting his name behind it. We are going to break down exactly what that means, along with a new cornerback signing replacing a surprising retirement, and everything worth knowing from Tuesday's practice out in Ashburn. Let's start with the Diggs news, because it is genuinely the biggest storyline hanging over this entire training camp right now. According to Keim, there is real mutual interest between this organization and Diggs, who has made it known publicly that he wants to play for his hometown team. Diggs grew up in the DMV area, and that kind of homecoming motivation matters, especially when it comes to convincing a proven veteran to accept a market-friendly deal rather than chasing the absolute biggest contract available elsewhere. In the meantime, according to Keim's reporting, two non-McLaurin receivers have genuinely started to stand out through the early stretch of camp: rookie Antonio Williams and veteran Treylon Burks. Williams has shown real quickness and the ability to separate cleanly at the top of his route stem, while Burks has been making tough, contested catches in the red zone and has looked genuinely comfortable working against zone coverage looks. Both of those players clearly have real paths to carving out bigger roles in this offense. But even accounting for that internal growth, if the actual goal here is winning a Super Bowl this season and building the most complete receiver room possible around Jaden Daniels, signing Stefon Diggs remains the clear, obvious move for this front office to make. Think about what Diggs genuinely brings to a roster. When healthy, he is about as automatic a bet for a 1,000-yard season as this league currently has to offer. He has reliable hands, elite route-running instincts, and real production after the catch. And last season, he was the leading receiver on a team that ultimately made it all the way to the Super Bowl. Adding a player of that caliber does not just fill a need at the number 2 receiver spot. It genuinely elevates every single receiver on this roster. Terry McLaurin sees fewer double teams and more room to operate with a legitimate second read drawing real defensive attention on the other side of the field. And a rookie like Antonio Williams becomes a significantly more effective player, working as a true number 3 option rather than being thrust into a full-time number 2 role before he is fully ready for that kind of workload. Realistically, none of the other non-McLaurin options currently on this roster, whether that is Burks, Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane, or Van Jefferson, project as being clearly better than what Diggs could provide on paper. Diggs would immediately raise the floor and the ceiling of this entire passing attack. With real available cap space still on the books and a receiver who genuinely wants to play here, there is a real growing sense throughout this fan base that it is simply a matter of when, not if, this deal eventually gets done. Now let's shift to a roster move that already has happened. Veteran defensive back Ahkello Witherspoon has retired from the NFL, and honestly, given some of the reporting that came out of this offseason program, that outcome does not come as a total shock. Witherspoon did not play his best football a season ago, and multiple reports out of OTAs and the early days of camp suggested he had lost a step athletically, the kind of natural decline that eventually catches up with every veteran defensive back. In his place, the Commanders quickly signed veteran cornerback Fabian Moreau to fill that depth role. And honestly, this is a genuinely sneaky good pickup for this roster. Moreau is an older cornerback, and typically once a perimeter defender crosses 30 years old, some real decline in play tends to follow. But Moreau has actually bucked that trend recently, spending the last 2 seasons playing for Durante Jones and Brian Flores in Minnesota, and by every account, playing some of the best football of his entire career during that stretch. According to available advanced metrics, Moreau earned a genuinely strong overall grade across roughly 100 defensive snaps in 2024, and followed that up with an even better performance across 200 snaps this past season at 31 years old, the best grade of his entire career. There is real added value here beyond the raw performance numbers, too. Moreau actually began his NFL career right here in Washington from 2017 through 2020, so while he was not necessarily viewed as a dominant player during that original stretch, he does bring some familiarity with this specific building. More importantly, he arrives already knowing this exact defensive scheme inside and out, having played it directly under Durante Jones and Brian Flores in Minnesota the last 2 seasons, giving him a real leg up on some of the other depth pieces in this cornerback room who are still learning this system for the very first time. Do not be surprised if Moreau ends up making real noise during the preseason and pushes for one of the final depth spots at cornerback heading into the regular season. Now let's get into what actually happened out at Tuesday's practice, because there was plenty worth covering. This was an unpadded session following the very first fully padded practice of camp the day before, with pads set to return again on Wednesday. And it was a genuinely strong day for the offense led by quarterback Jaden Daniels, who by all accounts was locked in and sharp for the second straight day. According to reporting out of practice, Daniels had only 2 incompletions the entire session. One a smart, deliberate throwaway during a 2-minute situational drill, and the other a drop on what would have otherwise been a touchdown, courtesy of receiver Jalen Lane. That drop is admittedly a little concerning given some of Lane's ongoing struggles with drops through this camp, but on the whole, this continues a genuinely encouraging trend of Daniels looking increasingly comfortable and precise within new offensive coordinator David Blow's system, including a touchdown connection to Terry McLaurin in the end zone. The biggest individual winner of the entire practice, though, was receiver Luke McCaffrey, and it was not particularly close. Reports out of practice described McCaffrey getting open constantly and hauling in one explosive downfield reception after another. He reeled in a roughly 40-yard seam route from the slot, splitting the coverage cleanly between 2 defensive backs on a perfectly placed dime from Daniels. He followed that up with a shorter drag route for a solid gain, showing real ability after the catch, before adding yet another explosive grab for around 40 yards, only getting run down right at the 5-yard line before reaching the end zone. By every account, McCaffrey was simply eating in the middle of the field all day long, and multiple reporters covering the team specifically flagged him as the single biggest standout on the entire roster from that session. Combine that with the earlier praise for Treylon Burks and Antonio Williams, and it genuinely raises an interesting question. Maybe part of the reason this front office has not yet pulled the trigger on Stefon Diggs is that they genuinely want to see whether one of these in-house options, McCaffrey included, can fully emerge and answer that number 2 receiver question from within the current roster. If McCaffrey keeps stacking days like this one, given that he is still a former 3rd-round pick with real draft pedigree, there is a real path for him to force his way into a legitimate starting role regardless of what happens on the Diggs front. On defense, there was also a genuinely interesting leadership subplot worth tracking. Veteran linebacker Frankie Louvu has reportedly been wearing the green dot, the designation that identifies the player responsible for relaying defensive play calls and getting everyone properly aligned during these early training camp practices, rather than rookie linebacker Sonny Styles. That makes sense on the surface, given that Louvu is the more experienced veteran presence in that room. And getting an entire new defensive scheme properly installed benefits from having that responsibility rest with someone who already has real NFL command experience. But do not be surprised if that responsibility eventually shifts towards Styles by the time the regular season actually begins. Styles is regarded as an exceptionally sharp, cerebral player, and he actually handled that exact green dot responsibility back in college, where modern programs have increasingly integrated helmet communication technology at the collegiate level as well. Between his intelligence and the work ethic he has reportedly shown early in this camp, There is a real belief that Styles will eventually earn that leadership responsibility and real trust from his teammates as the season approaches. Finally, a quick update on the ongoing kicking competition, because it took a real turn on Tuesday. Kicker Jake Moody, who had been perfect on all his field goal attempts through the first stretch of camp, had his worst outing of the summer, missing 2 of 6 attempts. Meanwhile, undrafted rookie kicker Drew Stevens out of Iowa went a perfect 6 for 6, officially winning the day in this ongoing battle for the first time this camp. That said, Moody still holds the overall edge when you account for the full body of work through camp so far, and remains the slight favorite to win this job heading into the regular season. But this was undeniably a real notable data point in Stevens' favor, and this remains one of the more genuinely fascinating position battles to track as the rest of training camp plays out. So that is everything worth knowing heading into the rest of this week. Faithful, real, confirmed mutual interest in Stefon Diggs. A genuinely underrated new cornerback addition in Fabian Moreau. Another sharp practice from Jaden Daniels, a legitimate breakout day from Luke McCaffrey, and a kicking competition that just got a whole lot more interesting. Let me know down in the comments, will Stefon Diggs officially be a Commander by the time the first preseason game rolls around in just over a week? Drop your prediction below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you hit that subscribe button for daily Commanders training camp updates, because if this Diggs deal gets done, we will be covering it the moment it breaks. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I will see you in the next one. Go raise some hail.